All right. Welcome back to another episode, Paint the Black podcast. Matt Stone, Ryan Castro. And we got a very special guest to us and to the podcast, Mr. Jeff Kobernus. Jeff Kobernus, welcome. We'll get into your introduction here and kind of who you are and everything else, but welcome to the podcast, brother.
Yeah, awesome. Super excited to be here.
Great. So Jeff, we grew up together, the three of us and Jason, all from the little town of Castro Valley, California. And a lot of reasons why we wanted to have you on. One, because obviously, we've grown close over the last few years, and your specialty in baseball is, incredible. I love your story. I love who you are, who you stand for, and your family, your growing family. Congratulations. And yeah, we just wanted to kind of have you on, talk real life, talk real baseball, authentic baseball, and what that journey really looks like. And so, shoot, I think the first time that actually did Ryan, were you on the team with Ryan too? Was Ryan? Right, did you play on the Orioles with us?
I don't know if I was there still. Actually, the more I think about it, I might have just left when you came in.
I think it would have been my 15-year-old year, and Jeff, probably your 13-year-old year, right?
Yeah, I mean, Ed Dean was there. I don't remember what year that was, but those were some good teams. Ryan Sandoval, Castro, that was a fun group of guys.
That was really fun. A lot of winning that went on out there.
Yep.
But then you, where did you live in Castro Valley?
I actually lived in San Leandro, so
That's right.
we kind of cheated the school district, used my grandma's address because San Leandro was subpar to Castro Valley and got into those schools and baseball district.
Love it. So we went to Castro Valley High School, and you went to the dark side.
We did go to the dark side. I did go to the dark side. Bishop O'Dowd. I don't even know why. I think I was recruited by Joel Kaufman, who ended up getting arrested for some stuff and spending time in prison. But I know, crazy stuff. Went over there.
You were safe, though.
I was safe, but that was, we had some great teams, but he definitely knew nothing about baseball, but he knew how to recruit. And that was kind of why I chose O'Dowd. Probably could have went to Castro Valley, but it was just, I think, a better opportunity to go over to O'Dowd.
Totally. The old Dragons, man. What a cool school, though. I mean, that's like a hidden gem in the Bay Area. I mean, a lot of people, will say what they will about Oakland, but Bishop O'Dowd has spit out some really, really good athletes. And
they always had good programs: baseball, football, basketball, academics, and I was fortunate that my parents were willing to make the sacrifice to pay, private school tuition at the time. Of course, I didn't appreciate it; just looked at it as normal. But looking back on it, to put me in that position to be around, good coaches and people, and have that opportunity was fortunate.
Yeah,
There's some big names that came out of that school. Also, I mean, I remember being at one of the games and looking over, and Pete Carroll was chilling over there in the stands watching one of the games. Just like,
there was a lot of big names. I mean, Tyson is probably, one of the biggest names. Joe Ross. I had a cup of coffee up there, but there was some big names that came out of there. But Tyson is, he's probably one of the bigger names to come out of there, especially being from Oakland and still living in Oakland and all that stuff.
Yeah, and you still stay in contact with him quite a bit too. Yeah, him and Joe.
Yep, him and Joe. I lived with Joe in Walnut Creek for a few years, but Tyson, he's just, you wouldn't know that he is almost a 10-year big leaguer, right? He treats you the same and treats everybody the same. He's just a really, really good dude, never arrogant, and he's always looks to take care of people, and he's just he's a good guy to have in your circle for sure.
Yeah, big fan of Tyson. I mean, I can remember, and I mean, it's high school. We always, everybody that looks back on their high school career, it's like, oh yeah. But I mean, I remember having like some legit pitching matchups with him in high school, and just seeing, how much better Guys like you and Jason and Tyson and Joe really are, it's like there's good. I was good in high school. Ryan, we were good in athletes, good enough. But then there's like the next level of athlete, right? And it's just it's fun to watch that. It's fun to compete against it because I mean, shoot, over at San Leandro, there was Jared Page and Dennis Dixon and Ray Stokes, and some serious talent came out of our league when we were playing there. So yeah, that's super cool. And I mean, from Bishop O'Dowd, you went right to be a Cal Bear.
Yep. And I think part of that influence was Tyson was over there, went to O'Dowd with him. And then I had some of my other travel ball guys like Brett Jackson, who played in the big leagues with the Cubs, and Blake Smith. A lot of the guys that I grew up playing with went to Cal. And, the fact that I knew Tyson and felt comfortable going there. Plus it was in my own backyard. It was in Berkeley. I could, still be 20 minutes away from home. So that was kind of why I chose Berkeley and enjoyed it. It was a good time there, but there was we didn't win as much as we should, but there was some really, a lot of big league talent came out of Berkeley.
Yeah. I remember the Pac-12 has always been something where it's like everybody there is a damn good athlete. It's, there's going to San Jose State, like there's some people that, like myself, that just find themselves on a Division I roster, right? But typically the Pac-12 with, the Cal, Stanford, Oregon now, my gosh, amazing talent. And so that's the Pac-12 in itself is a huge accomplishment to be able to go compete in that division.
Yeah, and there was a lot. So when we were there, it was like Brandon Morrow, Brennan Bosch, Brett Wallace at Arizona State, Ike Davis at Arizona State, Jason Kipnis at Arizona State, Tyson, Brett, myself. There was a lot of. I mean, we were probably the biggest underachievers as far as winning, going to the playoffs, and I don't know the rhyme or reason how you have that many people and don't win, but there was just a lot of good talent at that time, and a lot of those guys had good careers.
Well, I think you kind of mentioned it, man. I mean, you got teams like Arizona State. I mean, Brett Wallace has actually said that he would come on here with us too. I know him and Jay played together with the Astros for a little bit. What was the rivalry like? We had Jeff Blum on a few weeks ago. He's a Cal Bear, and we kind of touched on this a little bit. But what's the rivalry like, Cal and Stanford, when you're playing in it? I know what it's like to play against both of you guys, and totally different feels for prepping for those games. How was it being on one of the sides?
It was to my best of recollection, we hated Stanford, and we probably hated them because they were a little smarter than us, and they usually won a little bit more than we did. They had better facilities than we did, and I remember hating Stanford, and it wasn't necessarily. I mean, you always had that aura just going to Cal Stanford. It's a rivalry, but for those reasons, I remember just playing at Stanford and their facilities and their batting cage. You go to those places, they're so nice. Our facilities at Berkeley just weren't as good. We didn't have the spend that they did. And, we hated them. They were always, you had to be really smart. You could kind of cheat the system in Berkeley a little bit to get in, and you could be a good athlete and get in. You couldn't do it at Stanford. You had to have both. Hard to do that, but you could cheat a little bit at Cal.
The facilities, that's funny because come on over to San Jose State. I'll show you some facilities.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, there was. Yeah, we might have been a step above you guys, but we were a step below Stanford for sure.
Yeah, we were really good at drinking. That was for sure. Ryan, when you'd go watch Jay play at Stanford, Sunken Diamond was probably. I'm trying to think of all the fields. Sunken Diamond has to be one of my favorite fields to play at. Just the nostalgia behind it. I mean, watching Jay play there, what was pretty incredible, right?
Yeah, I mean, just the mystique of the stadium. I mean, just being on the campus of Stanford, like, listening to some of the stories that Jay would tell me, like, you have like Olympians walking around like it's no big deal. Like there's, just people all over the place. It's like, oh, there's this person, that person, whatever, and it's just not, just another day for a Stanford campus. It's
Yeah.
just,
Stanford was always, they would always sell out games. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you have 4, 5, 6,000 people in attendance. You go to a game at Berkeley, we might have 700, right? So we were always excited to go there and play. And it definitely was a feel of, even though you were in college, it was like a little mini big league feel to be playing against those guys over there.
Totally. When you were there, did you guys go to the regionals or anything like that?
We did my second year. I mean, we got our doors blown off against Long Beach State and just uh, didn't stand a chance. But we went to the regionals one year. We missed the playoffs 2 of the 3 years I was there. I was there '07. I was there '07, '08, '09, and I believe it was our second year that we made the playoffs. But we had good teams. We just never could put it together.
Well, you put it together because then out of there you got drafted by the Nationals, right?
Yeah, and I kind of got lucky. I was drafted in the second round, 50th overall, um, and I had an incredibly hot streak my junior year where, probably the last 20, 25 games of the season leading up to the draft, I was hitting about 300, I think. But the last 25 games, I think I ended the season 342, 344 with 8 home runs. I hit like 6 or 7 home runs and batted 500 the last 25 games of the season. Was kind of unconscious, which helped my draft status. But was fortunate enough to get drafted and be picked pretty high and have them invest a little bit of money in you.
Totally. Now, explain your pick in the draft because um, you were a Rule 5 guy, right?
Yeah, so I was drafted 50th, and so when you get drafted, I believe that those teams have a right to you for 4 years. And so if they don't add you to the roster after year four, you basically can go into a pool of guys where if another team selects you, they can pull you from that system. If they add you to the 40-man roster, you don't have to be on the 25, but you're on the 40-man. And so after I was there '09, 10, 11, 12. So after my double A season in 12, I had a good season. I think I hit 282, had 45 stolen bases, played about 90 games. I was injured a little bit, but the Red Sox actually Rule 5 drafted me because Nationals didn't add me to the 40-man roster, which allowed the Red Sox to pull me in the Rule 5 draft. They added me to the 40-man, traded me to the Tigers almost instantaneously, and then I went to big league camp in 2013 with the Tigers.
Interesting. And then how'd you get back with the Nationals then?
So what happens is if you don't make the team, if you're cut at any point during the season or DFA, um, they send you back to your team. So basically, I spent 4 seasons with the Nationals, kind of got to know the coaches, knew some of the big league players. So you kind of get comfortable, and then all of a sudden, I was plucked from that system and thrown into big league camp with the Tigers. And that was my first big league camp. I had never been to big league camp. So all of a sudden, I went to Fan Fest in Detroit, and I'm on a bus with Verlander, Jordan Zimmerman, Scherzer, and all those guys. And it's, to be honest, it's a little uncomfortable because you're showing up there and you're kind of, who's this guy? Right. And so it is, and I'm fairly quiet in that sense, unless I'm totally comfortable. And it was a little different. I had a pretty decent spring, but that spring, Matt Tuiasosopo, I think he was signed as like a 1 year free agent. And I remember he was like in eight or 9 games, he hit like 6 home runs. He homered off like Strasburg and a couple other, where he just had this monster spring, and it basically came down to me and him. He made the team, I didn't, and they sent me back to Washington.
Little brother of Marcus. That's
Hmm.
you mentioned Zimmerman. We'll get into him in a second. But you ended up making it to big league camp or to the big leagues. When did you get called up?
So I was sent back to Washington. There was like 2 or 3 days left of spring, and then they sent me to AAA. Went to AAA, had the hottest start of any player probably in the minors, where I think I started the season 9 for 12, and like 25 for 45, something crazy. And then I was called up in May, um, and again it was a little different because when I got called up, I didn't go to spring with the guys in the nationals, right? Where what happens is when you go to spring training, there is a bunch of minor league guys there. You do get to know the big league guys. They see your face. You get to joke with those guys. I was in spring training with the Tigers in big league camp. So when I went to Washington, it was kind of that same theme. Like, okay, who's this guy? Like, oh, he was in big. Why wasn't he in big league camp with us? So I ended up getting called up in May, um, for my first call up with the Nationals. But again, it was just a little bit of that unfamiliarity because I didn't get to spend a bunch of time around this. I knew a couple of those guys, but I just didn't know a bunch of them.
Yeah, that's Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I was gonna say with that much movement, like obviously just the minor leagues in itself is a crazy grind. I mean, how how do you deal with the mental side of it as far as with that being like, is there like a stigma being a Rule 5 guy, coming up? Is it?
A little bit because when um, the minor league. I was in Syracuse, New York, in AAA. That might be the worst place to have AAA. It was 38 degrees. It was snowing, and outside of knowing Syracuse basketball, nothing against Syracuse, New York, but there's nothing else there. It is gray skies, overcast, um, and so bouncing around to those teams, um, it does wear on you a little mentally, and that's kind of where you have to. Um, the hard part is when you walk into a big league locker room, you are supposed to know your place a little bit, right? So it's that fine line of knowing that you belong but also staying out of everybody's way, right? And if you're not, um, knowing your role on that totem pole, right, you don't want to start upsetting or pissing off some of the big league guys, the big name guys, which at the time was like Adam LaRoche, Jason Worth, Ian Desmond, some of those guys there, where it's like, who the hell is this guy walking in like he owns the place? So it is walking that fine line because if you don't, right, you lose your confidence, like you don't belong. And hey, I'm just here to show up and spend some time, right? But at the same time, when you're in the minors, you show up and you do your routine every day, and the hitting coach knows your routine. Hey, I'm going to see you in the cage in 15. You go through the same routine every single day outside of a show and go, which would be like, oh, we played a night game. It went 14 innings. We're playing a day game at 11 a.m. or something. So we're just going to show up to the field at 9:30 and just go. In these scenarios, right, you have to learn the hitting coach. Hitting coach is asking you about your routine. You're kind of starting blank, and it's a whirlwind. You don't have a place to stay. You're staying in a hotel, right? You got all your luggage, suitcase. You're very scrambled. And for me, I like to feel very organized, and I have my bags, I have my bats, I know exactly where everything's at. And when you're all of a sudden, hey, you got to get on a plane tonight, you're showing up with half your gear because when I got called up, we were on the road. So I had two pairs of clothes, I had, two pairs of pants, a collared shirt. You don't have anything with you, right? And so it's just dealing with that kind of stuff. And, in baseball, it's routine based. So when you get off your routine, you get uncomfortable.
Yeah. When you got called up, Davey Johnson was the head coach at that time, right?
Yeah. And he was fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about your other manager in a second if you're open to that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you kind of touched on it already, and Ray asked, but the minor leagues, I mean, I kind of want to get into that with Jason a little bit too. But I mean, he kind of like you didn't spend much time down there. I mean,
Yeah.
you're kind of rushed. And I think it was you and me talking about Kalenic the other day too, right? Like service time manipulation and all that kind of stuff that goes on. With all that stuff, like you have GMs admitting to doing that, like pushing these guys through. I want to stay on the mental side of things here real quick, just because when there's that much expectation put on you, you're super young. I mean, I still think that we're all young, Some people would argue that, but that's a tough position to be in, especially as a young person competing for a position in the big leagues, which is every kid's dream. But now it's your full-time job as well, and your way of making money. And if you don't, produce, then you're out, and now you got to go find a job in the real world.
Yep. No, and I think the best way to put it would be, I don't know if you've heard of Tony Tarasco, but he was the right fielder with the Orioles, where
Mm-hmm.
he reached up to catch that ball. I think somebody reached over and caught the ball on a
It's
home run
against
the
the
third
Yankees,
year.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
Jeter.
he was my hitting coach and um, first base coach, all this stuff growing up through the minors. And then when I got to the big leagues, he was the first base coach. And I think the truest statement in baseball is the easiest part is making it to the big leagues. That's the easy part. The hard part is staying in the
Yeah.
big leagues.
So for someone like Jason, 13 years, it's quite an accomplishment then, right?
It is astounding to say the least. To stay injury free. You don't spend that much time in the big leagues um, without being a really good person, teammate, staying out of trouble, good attitude, hard worker. You have to be all those things to remain the team. Unless you're just crazy, crazy Mike Trout, Bryce Harper talented. That's why I see some of these guys that, they'll test positive for something or, get caught up at a nightclub. And even though it's a small incident, you're staining
Right.
your career forever. And so just for Jason, I'm not crazy following baseball, but I follow Castro. I've never seen him ever heard a whisper of, hey, he was late today. You have to be super straight laced and be able to perform and play to remain in the league that long. And again, he didn't have a 10-year contract,
Right.
right? He signed on 2 years, 4 years, or whatever he was doing. But that just is again um, shows that people like him in the clubhouse. They think he's got a good influence on young people. They think he's hardworking.
Yeah, definitely is. Ryan, is he hardworking? Was he always
Only,
hardworking?
only because I had to teach him, as older brother.
Yeah.
You
I'm
take.
still waiting for that. I'm still waiting for that bonus to come in.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to be on. You need on 10. You need to be on 10% of everything he gets, sir.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, double digits at least for sure. That's cool. Um, what would you say, Jeff, that you struggled with most, um, coming up in baseball? Maybe even from like growing up to, the minor leagues to the major leagues. Like, what was the hardest part for you, in maybe internally and externally?
I mean, I think the hardest part of baseball is, when you're playing college football, you play every Saturday. When you go to the NFL, you play every Sunday. When you're playing college baseball, you play sometimes on Tuesday and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday. When you go to the minors and the majors, you're playing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You're getting one day off a month. It is a totally different game. You're not playing 50 games, right? You're playing 150 plus 30 in spring training, plus another 15 to 20 if you make the playoffs. So you're not prepared for that because, you go have a good weekend in college baseball and then you can coast for 5 days and enjoy that where, in pro baseball, you're only as good as what you did that day. And you go 4 for 4 and then you wake up the next morning, nobody remembers. The positive of that is you go 0 for 4, nobody remembers, but you remember,
Right.
right? And so I think the hard part is um, you know you have to find a way to have confidence because it's inevitable that playing a season that long, you're going to go through struggles that you've never gone through. How are you going to handle them? How are you going to handle them when you're in Hagerstown, Maryland, in the middle of nowhere, showing up off a 12-hour bus ride, you're 1 for 30, and then you hit 2 line drives to start the game and you're 0 for 2. Nobody, nobody knows that and nobody cares. So it's definitely can wear on you.
We've definitely been talking a lot about that, Ryan and I, just because of, Jason's having an unfortunate start right now, and he's making good contact. He's having, some quality at bats, but he just can't get something to land. So we, Ryan and I haven't been in that situation. Ryan, do you ever feel like that at work?
What's that?
Just kind of like you're doing the right thing, but it doesn't, you're not producing. I mean, we're kind of fortunate in our jobs. Ryan's a firefighter. I'm a cop, and we go to work and we are presented with something, and we deal with it. And once it's done, it's typically done. In any sport that gets watched, that's typically not the case. You have people scrutinizing you from the outside looking in. And that was Jeff. That's one of the things that I want to get to here in a little bit is for someone like you who spent 2 years in the major leagues and then kind of bounced around a little bit trying to fight your way back in there. Most people would be like, well, that sucks, like whatever, and not really appreciate how difficult that is, right? I think for those of us that have played, we understand, like, dude, you made it to the big leagues, like that's phenomenal. That's 1% of the 1%, and so it's something that I think that guys like Jay have done 13. Tyson Ross I think has 10 or 11 years, 12 years. But it's also kind of the position you get thrown in, and kind of who's your coaches, who's in charge of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing too is you also have to be a little bit lucky, right?
Yeah.
Because when we're in the minors, you're kind of seeing everything. You're in a league, South Atlantic League, Texas League. You're seeing all the players in the organization. You're seeing guys get called up to the big leagues, and it's tough because if you're on a different team, right, you could be sitting in the big leagues right now, but you're sitting in AAA behind a guy that's making $200 million in the big leagues. Whereas, I think when I was coming up, the Astros were terrible.
Yes.
And it was like, gosh, if I was with them, they would have brought me up and they would have gave me a year to go fail. Now, again, I'm just giving a hypothetical, but it's that kind of scenario where it is a little bit of luck of draw. Somebody gets hurt, and you get off to a little bit of a hot start. All of a sudden, you're in there, right? And so when I came up with the Nationals, I was playing every day at second base in AAA, and then when I got called up, I didn't play for 8 days, 9 days. I was on the bench, and all of a sudden I was learning to be a bench guy. Chad Tracy was telling me, hey, look at, they got a righty warming up in the pen. We got, Geo spot coming up fifth next inning. You might be going in there. Let's go in the cage. And it's like, what are you talking about? And all of a sudden you're playing manager. You relax for the first 3-4 innings. After that, all you are doing is back and forth to the cage, warming up, not knowing when you're going to go in. So just being able to adjust to stuff like that, because I was just used to playing every day.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I don't envy that at all. I think a lot of people take for granted what ball players and athletes are doing, and it's just you hear people, for lack of a better term, shit talking, because that's all they can do as we go back to our normal jobs, and these guys are busting their butts on the field, and it's not knowing how mental the game really is. I mean, as a ball player, you have to coach your way through, like you just said, every inch of the game. I mean, I'm reading David Ross's book, Teammate. I just finished it today, and it's cool because he breaks down the entire 2016 Game 7 of the World Series and talking through, but he goes through like different scenarios and stuff about being a role player type of guy, and like him or not, he gives really good perspective on what it's like to come off the bench and in feeding that kind of stuff. So it's crazy. I don't envy that.
I think that's part of our podcast too, is that you get trolls online, especially more and more now because everything's online, but everybody just sees what the surface is, and it's so easy to shit talk and say this and that and the other and not know behind the scenes, like with Jay right now, he's transitioned more to a backup guy. So he's not getting a lot of reps. I think he's played 24 games total this year. So he's just getting that everyday stuff, or getting called in the eighth, like, hey, you got to go face this closer now. It's like, of course it's going to be tough, and the guys aren't going to see that. They're just seeing the stats. So
yeah, it's totally different when you're acquiring at bats one at a time, play a game, get 3 ABs, and then sit 3 days, come in the 6th, get 2 ABs. That's totally different than playing a week straight.
Yeah.
You know, hitting 5th every day, hitting 6th every day. It's very difficult to do. But, you know, the good thing is, you know, Jason isn't doing it under a microscope over, hey, can this guy do it? Nope. He's there because they know he can do it.
Right.
And he's also there because he's played in a World Series before, and he's been in the playoffs. And, you know, that's why some of the guys that are on those rosters aren't always the guys hitting 350, because they know that when times are going to be tough and all the pressure's there, they know that he's going to put the ball in play. They know that he can hit a sac fly. And that's the difference. That's why you see some of those guys that stick around for almost 20 years, because, yeah, they might not hit 350, but they know that they can rely on him when they're going to the World Series, right? Because he's been there.
Totally. That's totally true. That's good perspective. Jordan Zimmerman, you played with him, you said, in Detroit. You were also part of one of probably his biggest days in the career. And I was actually watching that live. It was kind of funny because you were playing right field, right?
I was
right?
actually, I came off the bench. I came off the bench that day. So I came in and I got actually have a great story about that. So I came in off the bench, me, Danny Espinosa, Tyler Moore. I forgot what the score was, but I think that we were, I don't know the exact situation. We were already clinched, or there was something where we all came in the game in like the 6th inning, and I was playing second base, and an inning or two goes by. I think we came in like the 5th. Inning or two goes by, and one of my good buddies, Tyler Moore, he's playing first base, and I forgot what the exact play was. It's actually hilarious. I forgot what the exact play was. It was like in the 8th inning. Somebody made a diving play or did something, threw him at first. He picked it. And I remember I was at second base, and, you know, it was kind of balls getting thrown around. And then Tyler's talking to me, and I was like, what? And he's like, man, this place is loud. What the hell's going on? And I was, and it was so, and I'm trying to think of exactly what he said, but I said, what? I said, dude, he's got a no hitter going. And he was like, what? And I was like, and it was the 8th inning. He had no idea. I mean, and from that point, right, now your butthole gets a little tight out there on the field to not make a mistake. But it was pretty funny because he had no idea that was going on. And I'm sitting over there second base, ready to run through a brick wall to try to, you know, do anything. And here he is lollygagging, picking one at first, you know, not knowing that there's a perfect game, which is probably good. It's probably better you didn't know, but that was a great, funny story. And then Souza obviously making that insane diving play.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But it was so loud. I mean, you couldn't even hear yourself, you know, talk. And that was a good experience.
That's awesome. That's a fun stadium to watch a game, and I can only imagine playing in it. And that was still fairly new when you were there too, right?
Yep. That was 2013, I think. But it was a newer stadium. You know, the locker room was designed after like the Oval Office, so it was a big oval. I mean, it was cool. It was a super, super cool stadium.
That's awesome.
As Bay Area guys, how was it working with Matt Williams managing?
Yeah, so when I came up, Davey Johnson was there. Davey Johnson was there in 13. Matt Williams was there in 14. Davey Johnson is super old school. And God, who was the manager of the Tigers? It was Jim Leland.
Jim Leland.
He was always smoking cigarettes in the dugout, but Davey Johnson was just he's very old and quiet, and he would say stuff like, "Hey, youngster, I'm trying to get you in this game today, so, you know, be prepared." You know, I didn't like Matt Williams. A lot of guys didn't like him because he, you know, when he was there in 14 and 15, but when he came in 14, he was very intense, and a lot of guys didn't like that. And it doesn't bode well over the course of 162 games. I remember there was a ball that LaRoche didn't pick, and I remember him screaming from the dugout, "Pick the fucking ball!" Like, super intense. And, you know, sometimes it could come off lazy how those guys are picking it at first. And there's stuff that, you know, is going to happen. But a lot of guys didn't like it. It just added extra pressure. And, you need to, if somebody's not hustling down to first and a guy drops the ball, then you can get on somebody because you can control that. But he was very military style, in your face, pull your head out of your ass and make the fucking play, stuff like that, where it was like, there's already enough pressure in the game. And it added to, everybody being a little more tense. I remember feeling that at the time. And, I mean, again, nothing against him, but, he just, that wasn't really my style. And I know a lot of guys didn't like that style, and he didn't last very long.
Yeah, obviously. How was that for you? Any examples of that, him with you?
As far as, well, so I remember what I hated was when we'd go to take ground balls, he would actually go out there and stand right next to me taking ground balls. We're talking pregame and everything, and stand 3 feet away from me, arms crossed, staring right at you, take ground balls. And, it was just that sort of vibe that, when you're there, when you're playing a 7 o'clock game and you're showing up at the field at noon, right? I'm saying there's a lot of stuff going on. This isn't Little League, show up 30 minutes before the game and you go play. It's too stressful. It's too long of a season to take in that attitude. He was also trying to force some of the older guys to go on longer road trips in spring. Most of the older vet guys don't take those long trips. And, I just remember he would announce who's going, and, Worth would say stuff like, "Now you're out of your fucking mind. Like, I'm not getting on that bus." Just stuff like that, where it was like, there was a lot of tiffs going on, where it was like, hey, you kind of got to let everybody do their thing. Davey Johnson might have been too laid back, and not say enough, but just didn't like that style. There's already enough pressure to win.
Hell
and,
yeah.
And I think what people forget is that it's a business, and he's worried about his job, right? So you think that the coach is protected. Every single buddy in that locker room, from the first base coach, hitting coach, assistant coach, bench coach, trainer, everybody's worried about their job, unless you have one of those big contracts, right? So everybody, and when you're winning, everything's good. You start losing, things change fast.
Plus, as a player, did he win a World Series with Arizona? Was he on that team?
He might have been.
I think he might have been. I was going to say, because if he didn't have a World Series as a player, I mean, he definitely didn't have one in his prime, that's for sure, with the Giants. But, I mean, I can see the stress. But, yeah, I've heard nothing but crazy stories about him just being a complete dick. So, but, hey, I didn't play for him, so I don't know firsthand and never met the guy. But,
he just, again, it was just, it was definitely a little more difficult for younger guys because, he did watch himself a little bit, obviously, around the older guys, but, he could embarrass you in front of people and say stuff. And it just, again, it doesn't bode well 24/7, 365, playing 200 games, including spring training, right? It's just,
right.
It's going to surface, and we didn't do very well with him.
So I'm going to call you out here for a second, just because I've had the pleasure to kind of grow close to you over the last couple of years. I mean, you sold us our house, hooked us up with that, and it's been really, really awesome getting to connect and hang out and chat the way that we do. And I don't take that for granted. But you did say that, okay, you don't follow baseball that closely, right? For somebody, most baseball players, no matter, how long they've played, especially, like me and Ryan, we follow it because, Jay's playing. We know Jay's playing. Like, you have guys in your phone that are actively playing right now,
I'll get Bryce Harper on the phone right now. Just kidding.
He's probably sleeping somewhere out there in Philly. The guy's just dropping nukes left and right. But why is it that you don't follow the game anymore?
I like watching highlights. I think it was nice to be that. The nice part is there's obviously stress in everything you do, but it was a different kind of stress in baseball that um, it just wears on you a little bit. And I think the when you're struggling, you're trying to make a team, it's a different kind of stress. Obviously feeding your family is stressful too, but I think it's one of those things that it to me, even makes me a little, gives me a little anxiety just thinking of showing up at the field at 12 and putting in all this work. And um, you go out there and play and it's fun, but you can go through some dark spells in there pretty fast. And I don't think people realize that, is that, like we talked about, you're a lot of times you get in the field. Most of the time you're at the field at 12:30. You got nowhere else to be. You wake up at 10, eat breakfast, you may watch TV for a little bit, but you're at the field at 12. You're all day there. And then, you go up there and, I mean, I fortunately, I had some pretty good seasons, but, you just, you go up there and you have some rough spells, and that's tough when you go in to put work in every day. And, um, you're having some rough stretches, and it can get, nobody cares. That's the bottom line. Nobody cares. So you can whine and feel sorry for yourself, but nobody cares. You're away from your family. I think it's when I got back from baseball, the nicest part was just being able to um, spend time with family and know that I didn't have, hey, I'm leaving in a month, right? And that's why it's like, dude, you play in the World Series, you're playing in October, you got a couple of weeks off, and then you're training and you're leaving again. And it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, and you talked about being in dark places. I mean, that's shocking to me. I mean, I think that there's a lot that goes on that we don't see behind the scenes and as fans. Because I mean, Ryan and I we're fans, right? I mean, Ryan, wouldn't you agree with that? We're just big old fans, right?
Right.
And so we take for granted what you guys have accomplished and what these guys are doing. And I think it was Drew Robinson with the Giants. I don't know what team he was with, but I mean, you have guys, committing suicide. You have guys that are, substance abuse. You have all this stuff, and I mean, that's shocking to me. But at the same time, it's not, because after you describe all that kind of stuff, like you have nobody sometimes, and it is by yourself, and so, that's kind of suicide's definitely been big in my life recently, and I've been affected by that more times than I'd like to be. But it's crazy to think about that with baseball, right? I mean, that's almost unacceptable in my opinion, because you're creating a work environment where people don't want to be. And maybe what do you think is kind of the root cause outside of just being kind of by yourself on that?
I mean, I think everybody's a little different. Some people take it differently, but I think you're just put into a position that you haven't been before, where, um, you are, you're eating crappy food. And I'm referring to the minor leagues. The major
Right,
leagues is a different kind of stress. You
right.
don't have to deal with food. You don't have to deal with travel, but you still have the pressure of winning. You're on the big stage, all that stuff. But in the minors, right, you're just you're in the slums. I mean, it is, at least when I was playing, it was the slums. I mean, you have terrible fields for the most part, terrible food. Um, it's actually surprised that it's even been able to go on as long as it's been going on. But um, when you put in a lot of work, and again, it's part of it, but you might have a bad month, and it's hard to um, get out of that and just say, okay, well, today's a new day. I'm going to go about it, and everything will be different. But um, we had guys that would drink all the time. There was guys that, um, gosh, I'm trying to remember his name. Probably shouldn't even say his name, but I remember he used to drink. He used to drink probably 5 to 6 mixed drinks throughout the game, and it would just be, it was very common. Um, and I just, so when I was playing, I was actually prescribed Adderall. And I remember, so in 2015, I was having like these not blackouts, but like these, I would kind of black out during the game a little bit and kind of see stars. And I remember, and this is kind of, I mean, this is where my career ended up basically ending was, so in 2015 in spring training, I remember, I remember striking out twice. We were playing the Marlins, struck out twice, and I only had two at bats, struck out looking twice. And, I like kind of froze and kind of blacked out on these pitches. And this was at the very beginning of spring training, and I told Randy Knorr, who was one of the bench coaches at the time, and he actually came up to me and said, like, "Hey, we're early on. Don't worry about yesterday's game. Like, we're going here today. Like, you're in the mix to make the team." And he's like, "Everything's all right." And I was like, "Well, I have been kind of having this issue." And he's like, "Don't even say anything else. Let me get Lee, who was our trainer at the time." And I told him, and basically what I was telling him is because I had been prescribed Adderall for like 10 years, that I was saying, "Hey, I have heard that there's different stuff. Ritalin, I haven't really been reevaluated to see if I should even be taking this, And he said, "Oh, we'll get Frank in here," who was at the time therapeutic. I forgot what he was. Frank Jans was his name. And I remember the next day, Williams called me in his office, and this is the very next day, and he said, if you're not right mentally, you're not going to be able to perform. We're going to send you down to minor league camp. And I didn't really think of anything of it at the time. And I was sent down to minor league camp. And then the next day I showed up to minor league camp, and they put me in the game. I was playing in a minor league game, and they put me on the field in like the fourth or fifth inning. And I went in for one inning and had one at bat. Then they pulled me off the field and then released me. And that's how I ended with the Nationals. And, after that was done, I realized the reason they did that was because they couldn't release me after I had went in there basically asking to be reevaluated for that medication. And they wanted me on the field because they said, "Hey, he's on the field, he's playing, nothing's wrong with him." We just ended up releasing him. And that's how my career ended, because from there on, it was a battle of, trying to figure out what medications I should be taking, and should I even be taking Adderall. And, it was unfortunate.
Gosh. Wow. That's a crazy story.
Forced out of the game.
That's how I take that. What's crazy is at the time I was just naive to go, okay, I guess I'm not right mentally. You're right. What should have happened is I probably should have stopped playing from there. But what happened was because I ended the season in 2014, I was on the major league roster. And so they would have had to have kept paying me and basically seeked medical help until I was, better. And who knows, you see guys go on the DL for mental stuff, and I could be out 6 months. Maybe I'd miss a year. They'd be paying me that whole time. And the reason that's why they had to send me down to minor league camp. But at the time, I didn't really know my rights, right? I wasn't going to say as a young guy, "Screw you, I'm not going to minor league camp. You can't do this. I want treatment here on the big league side," because the big league side and the minor league side was two completely different stories. Nobody gives a shit about you on the minor league side. You're just another guy. I specifically remember the doctor had said, "Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we take a smaller dose and we'll take it at a different time, see how you're out there today." And so that was the day that I was going out there to the minor league game. And they purposely put me on the field to immediately pull me off to say, "Hey, he did not end injured. He is fine. He was in a game playing." And when I actually was getting released, and I came up with the organization, I was talking to, I forgot what his name was, Doug Harris, who was Doug Harris, and it was still Rizzo was a GM and all that. And I said, this is because I went in there in the office and complained of, this situation. And I specifically remember them saying, "We don't know what you're talking about. You didn't go in anywhere. We have no idea what you're talking about. Unfortunately, it's just not the right, fit." And it was one of those scenarios.
Wow.
There's the door.
Wow.
Yep. And that's why, again, you just have to remember that, that's why a lot of times guys are saying, like, fuck these guys, get paid, who cares? It's because, they don't, they don't really care about you. And that's why it's a business, right? And that's why you have a players association that protects the players and all that stuff.
So how is the transition then? I mean, you talk about, like, in the beginning of the episode, like going from high school to college, minors, majors, and then all of a sudden, like, you're done. What is that like?
Well, I ended up signing with the Giants, and I went to San Jose, and then, which was high A, then ended up going to Triple A. It was, it was actually a relief at the time, because I was struggling to stay on the field because, I was having so many, like, racing thoughts out there, and I was having these episodes where I'd be on the field and see, like, little stars and black out for just a quick second on the field and kind of have to snap out. And so there was so much pressure that when that happened, it was almost a relief, right, that I was out of it. Now, of course, looking back on it, probably could have hired a lawyer or done something more, because they definitely are not allowed to do that, right? They have to, they can't send you down if you're injured. And at the time, I wasn't physically injured, but I was, injured in some sort of capacity. But again, all I was asking for was to be reevaluated, because it was like, am I even supposed to be taking this many milligrams? Should I be taking it 3 times a day? Should I be taking it once a day? Should I be taking Ritalin? And I had the same prescription for almost, I had they said I had ADD, for 10 years prior. I just didn't really think of it. But again, that was the only common denominator of having these spells was, taking Adderall. I was having trouble sleeping and just all this different stuff. But I already know what happened. As soon as I went in there and said that, it was, okay, come in tomorrow, we'll talk about it. They immediately had a meeting, and it was going to be, we got to get him out of here, because he could be out for the year, and we're paying him, and we got to cut ties. And again, what they could have done is they could have, at the time, I forgot how it all worked out, but very rare for a second round pick who had spent some time in the big leagues previously, to be released. They easily could have sent me down to the minor leagues and kept me on the AAA roster, because I wasn't at the time where I had to make the big league roster or not. I don't remember how exactly works, but that's why when we went into camp, and I remember we had Denard Span, Jason Moore, Harper, all these guys were hurt. We had so few guys, we actually almost couldn't even formulate a starting lineup, that we were bringing over minor league guys that had no business being in camp. They were literally just there to fill in, and they were actually starting because we didn't have enough healthy guys. And I think I was the very first guy out of camp. Very rare for that to happen. Usually, they're getting rid of guys that are not on the 40-man, right? And you're at least, riding it out till a week or two before the season. So to be the first guy out of camp, and I remember Dan Uglo was like, dude, what the hell happened? Like, everybody was talking about, like, why are they walking him off the field? They, like, escorted me out of the place. Like, it was kind of crazy.
Oh my God. All right. Well, thanks for playing with us. Have a good one. Good grief.
Yeah.
What a joke.
But again, so it was, again, it wasn't something that, because again, the reason they didn't keep me around is because they would have had to have treated me on the big league side and then got me healthy and then sent me to the minor league side, and I would have been on AAA. So again, I wasn't with the Nationals for that long, and I was coming off of not a great season, but a pretty good season. And so there was no reason not to keep me in the minor leagues, but they needed to completely, wipe their hands clean and make it a clean exit. And it's a business.
Yeah. Speaking of business, what are you up to now?
So doing real estate, and I was fortunate enough to, my father-in-law is a big time producer of real estate. So when I married my wife, I had owned properties and bought some investment properties, so I was always into real estate, and then was able to catch on with him pretty quick and get moving on real estate. So that was fortunate, and it's a stressful business too. Nothing like baseball. I don't want any part of the stress of baseball, but um, it's been good.
That's awesome. I want a Harper story or something. I gotta give
It's so funny because when I was growing up, or when I was coming up playing, everybody hated Harper because, you know, he was a douche and all this stuff. And, to his, um, the guy's 20 years old, right? And you think about some of the stuff that I think about some of the stuff that I did at 25, 26, 27. And it's like, he's 20 years old, but the reason that he's as good as he is because he thinks he's that good as well, and if he came up with any sort of doubt, you're the number one pick, you're 19, you're supposed to be the next Babe Ruth. That's why I never mind Harper, because he did stupid stuff, but it was like, fuck him. He was, fuck what those guys think.
Yeah.
He was going to do what he did. And again, did stupid stuff, but it's like, what do you expect when somebody's 20, 21 years old? But he was trying to think of a funny Harper story. But he was always super cool, always super generous, for buying food, bats, but he could be a baby at times. But again, I think at some point everybody in their career was a baby, right? It just for us may have came in college or high school. Well, he was coming in the big leagues because he was better than everybody else, and he was doing it in the big leagues.
That's awesome.
Well, speaking of food, we like to ask every guest that comes on here, kind of wrap it up a little bit. Favorite places to eat? I don't know if you're a coffee guy, but we're big coffee guys. Favorite place maybe to grab coffees when you were in DC?
So I always ate at the clubhouse. So there was a sandwich place in DC, and I tried finding it before I came on here. It's a chain restaurant, and it's not coffee related, but food wise, there's a chain restaurant. It's a sandwich place. They only have them on the East Coast. And it was my favorite sandwich place, and I couldn't find it. Maybe they're out of business, but it was, I couldn't find it. My favorite place in Sacramento is Juno's by far. It's an unbelievable sandwich spot, but I'm super picky on coffee too. At the time playing baseball, we grab a Starbucks, but now I rely on my wife to, make her coffee, and she does something to it that doesn't taste like the other stuff.
Well, I saw you down at sociology too, so I know you.
Sociology is good. I got a little burned out of sociology, but that's a good place too. I'm sure there's a lot of big leaguers and stuff that live in El Dorado Hills that they'll go check that out too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Favorite walkout song? Ryan and I were talking about this with Jay, and we're trying to get him to find a different walkout song. And we've been throwing.
There's an art to it. I think we're gonna try to get it. We're gonna try to have another episode. We're gonna
what's
dive
his
deep into
walkout
that.
song?
Oh, I don't know what it is.
I think he's got some kind of Drake song right now.
Yeah, I would change mine all the time. My favorite walkout song that I had was somebody you probably never heard of. They were like a rap group out of the Bay Area, Starting Six. They had this song, This Ain't Water, and I remember always playing and guys on their team be like, dude, what is that song that you come out to? But it's called This Ain't Water, and they were a group out of the Bay Area that was a bunch of rappers that I loved Bay Area music at the time, and I was rolling with that one for a while.
Yeah, I told him it's your last year. Oh, there we go.
Not bad.
There you go.
Not bad. Good beat.
I mean, we saw what Edwin Diaz with the Mets has got right now. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah,
big trumpet
awesome
section. I think that's awesome. But I told him it's your last year. Like, let's just get crazy. Let's do something nuts.
Might as well.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think Hunter Pence used to come out to Katy Perry when he was on the Astros.
Well, he was also doing something else to her too. Well, cool. Hey, Jeff, we appreciate your time for sure, and it's definitely a pleasure to have you come on. It's a pleasure being your friend, first of all, and getting to hang out and doing life together. We're going to be having babies kind of similar times this year, which is really exciting. Your wife's incredible. Your family's incredible. So thanks for coming on here with us and hanging out. We definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, super honored to be on here, and you guys are doing some cool things here, and excited to keep listening, and glad that I can, with my not a ton of experience, contribute to hopefully something relatable for people in the audience to realize that it's not always as it seems, and it's guys are human beings too out there, even though they're getting paid a lot of money to do it. It's not easy to get those contracts, and the fact that Jason's got some big ones over the years, it's not only talent, it's personality and how they carry themselves, because they don't hand those out to anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, sweet. Ryan, you got anything else?
No, man, you said it all. I really appreciate your time, man. Thanks for coming on.
Awesome,
Sweet.
guys. All right, sounds good, guys.
All right. Well, you guys can find us at Ryan, on Instagram at Paint the Black Podcast. Twitter?
Yeah, all the socials. We got Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you can listen. We got it.
Awesome. Catch us on the next one. We're gonna have Tyson Ross on us with next time, guys, and then I believe Jay was teasing us with a little Lance McCullers too, coming up pretty soon. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for the follow. Have a good one.
See you guys.